guys, welcome to the garage. Today we're going to pick up where we left off on this 1995 GMC K1500 Sierra, front suspension kit and front brakes. Last time we left off was on the lower control arms and the torsion bars. Today we're going to pick up where we left off and start wrapping up everything and getting this thing back on the road again. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing we did was we put in the lower ball joints. That was a time-consuming job for me, at least, because I'm still a beginner. So I decided not to film it because there's also tons of videos out there that do a plenty good job of explaining it a hell of a lot better than I can do it. So you can do that research on your own time if you want to learn how to do that. Now that we got that out of the way, we did the tie rods, outer and inner. And for these trucks, you got an inner tie rod, sleeve, outer tie rod. And what you do is just screw them in and put them in easily. But to tell the difference, there is a difference. The inner tie rod is shorter. Look. The outer tie rod is longer. So that's a good way to tell because they look exactly the same out of the box. And this is a good way to tell the difference. The outer tie rod is also right hand thread and the inner tie rod is left hand thread, just to be able to tell the difference between them in case you get confused and get them mixed up. Trust me, you can't get them mixed up. And since we got these at Napa Auto Parts, they went ahead and kindly made them a little bit more different. The third difference, at least with this part that I got, outer tie rod, the grease fitting's on the top. Inner tie rod, it's not on the top, it's way back here. So yeah, that's a kind thing that Napa Auto Parts did, I would assume. I don't know if they're all like that, but at least this set that I got from Napa. And basically, here's another thing. This is where your alignment is, so you got to be careful when you put this in. For me, I ended up replacing the sleeve as well. So what I was able to do is I was able to save this, the old outer and inner tie rod combo. Put them side by side, just like that. And as you can see, it's roughly the same. So we're just going to call it good there because we are going to take this to an alignment shop. And remember, anytime you do some front end work like this, you take it to an alignment shop, have them check it and make sure it's good. Otherwise, you'll be wearing out your tires a lot quicker. So yeah. And by the way, for an alignment, that would be on the next episode. So stay tuned for that. Okay, so the first thing, since we have all this space, we're going to put in the CV axle. And since you probably know by now that there was nothing there when we took it apart. So, first thing we did was we hooked up with our buddies at Detroit Axle. And they hooked us up with this nice, brand new CV axle. And we got some wheel bearings, which I'll show you later. But let's put these in. And to install it, you just put it on just like that. And you get you at least one screw and just line it up with the holes and drive it in. And then you install the rest of them. There you have it. Now all you have to do is tighten them up. But I'd rather do that when the truck is on the ground. That way you would have resistance so you can actually tighten them. Or you could put it in four-wheel drive and tighten them, and then put it in two-wheel drive so you could spin it around and go around that way. But I'm going to wait till the truck is on the ground because it'll probably be a lot safer to do it that way. Okay, now that we have the CV axle put in, now's the time to get the shock put on. Since the upper control arm kind of goes around it, now you can just put the shock. And as you've seen in one of the previous episodes, those shocks do not belong on this truck. I'm just telling you right now. They're just so worn out that I decided, screw it, we're going to get some new ones. And to do that, we went to our buddies at Shock Surplus, and we picked up these nice Bilstein 4600 shocks right here. And all you do, just slide them in. It'll be a tight fit. Slide it in just like that. And for your shock mount, you gotta have your bolts with you. And it really comes in handy when you package everything. Again, make sure you don't lose your hardware. You might need it. And to figure out which one is the right one, this one is shorter than this one. So we'll find out. Nope, this one goes on the bottom. This one goes on the top. And what you do is you put the bolt and kind of slide it in and make sure it's a sweet spot, and there we go. The washer and the nut. And then just tighten it on. Okay, to attach the lower part of the shock, we had to get our jack here so we can lift this upper control arm a little bit. So what you do is you kind of center it underneath, start lifting away. Yeah, that is unsafe. Well, it took forever to put in, but basically what you do is you compress the the lower control arm as much as you can to close in on it and try to slide it in place like that. Yeah, on to the next step. Okay, next step to do is to put the upper control arm in. And again, like I said, I don't like doing ball joints. So we hooked up with our buddies at Napa, and we got this nice premium Moog upper control arm with a ball joint already screwed in. So let's put it in. All you have to do is just slide it. Maybe a little persuasion. And it'll go into place. Okay, now that you got the control arm in, you get the bolts. And in this case, they're the same size, so it doesn't matter if you mix them up. And what you do is you get your bolt, just like that, and you slide this little piece all the way to the end. You might need to use a little persuasion, but it should look something like this. You just put it in wherever you want. In this case, I'm going to choose to put it from back here because I don't want to have to try to fit a ratchet back there. Just try to get it in there somehow. Just like that. And a little persuasion. We'll just go in just like that. And to get the nut, same thing. You got your little flange, which goes in like that. This is supposed to hold the bolt from spinning, so you wouldn't have to bother with a wrench or anything. And all you do is just twist it in. Same thing on the other side, and just keep going. Okay, now that you got your shock mounted in there properly, it's time to put in your steering knuckle. And how you put it is this side up here. It's closer to the top, as you can see, than it is to the bottom. Okay? And the tie rod end is facing upwards. Okay? And what you want to do is you don't really want to tighten the upper control arm, so you can basically modulate it as needed. And then kind of move your, basically you find your fine adjustment and everything. But make sure once you take off your steering knuckles is you put them on each side or whatever. Like for example, the left side, you put it on the left side of the truck, or right side on the right side of the truck, or whatever makes you remember. So you won't have to think about which one goes where. But it's pretty easy to get once you find out. Just put your nut like that, and as you can see, it barely held in a few teeth, and it still held it from falling. But you want to get it in there a little bit nicer. That'll be fine. So, yeah. And then, get that taken care of. Slide this through. Then your upper control arm goes in just like that. And then you get your tie rod in. You want to kind of turn it to be right. It'll just slide in. Okay, so let's say you're in the middle of putting on your steering knuckle and you're trying to do the ball joint. But you spin this, I mean you can't spin it with your hand, but when you try to spin it with a wrench, look what happens. The whole thing spins with you. So you get a flathead screwdriver, stuff it in there somehow, and you spin the opposite direction. Obviously you got to get a bigger one, but you see the idea. You spin it the opposite direction while you spin the wrench. This should basically hold it in there, and that way you can put your ball joint in safely. Okay, now that we got the steering knuckle back on finally, let me run through a few quick tips, okay? Let's say you run out of cotter pins. Use a nail. Just bend it on both sides, as you can see here. Just bend it on both sides, make sure it doesn't go nowhere. There you go. There's a cotter pin temporarily, or just to kind of get you going. And, okay, that's the main thing. And another thing, if the ball joint spins with the nut as you're tightening it, make sure you have pressure on the little area itself. One way to do it is to jack up the steering knuckle, pressing up against the ball joint arm, or whatever you want to call it, and use a screwdriver like I mentioned earlier, or I think I did. So yeah, those are a few quick tips I would recommend while doing this job if it starts getting harder, which it did in this case. I hadn't had to do it on that side, but apparently I had to do it on this side. So yeah. Now, on to the next step. Okay, now that we got everything going on, next thing to do is to put the wheel bearing on. And for that, since we got new ones, like I said, actually they came with the CV axles. We hit up our guys at Detroit Axle, and they hooked us up with these nice stock wheel bearings that come with an ABS sensor. As you can see, here it is. And for hardware, because remember, we're not reusing that old junk that came off of this, because you remember how we stripped it out? Yeah, good luck trying to convince me to reuse that junk. Went to our boys in Napa, and they hooked us up with brand new hardware screws. These were only $20, but guess what? It's probably going to be worth it. Now, time to install it. Remember our trick with the 3 holes that are in the wheel bearing? Use the same trick to install the bolts. And turn them in the rest of the way. And there you have it. And remember, this thing does come with the ABS sensor. I'm trying to put it in right now. You put it in right here on one of the screws of the upper ball joint, and then one of these fittings goes up here, just like that, and then you plug it in where it's supposed to be. One thing that's really important, don't forget your dust shield, which goes in pretty much on top of your wheel bearing. So you put your wheel bearing, you put this dust cover, and then you screw it in just like you would normally do it. So yeah, just don't forget. Okay, so the next thing to go on is your brake calipers. And I'm going to show you a few things that I did. Yes, the original calipers were good, but I bought nice remanufactured AC Delco ones and spray painted them red. Yes, that's my spray painting job. I think I did pretty good. So what you want to do is you put the brake hardware. I already did this off camera, but I'm going to do it again just to show you. You want to coat it with some sort of grease that's specifically designed for brakes. I'm going to show it to you right now. See? Use on every brake job. I'm going to see if I can find this stuff and link it in the description below. And what you do now that you greased it, you just put it in. Now you get your brake pads. Yes, I'm reusing the ones that I had because I hadn't replaced them too long ago. And I want to basically go through them the entire way instead of just, just replace them now and they still have plenty of life left in them. So yeah, let's put them on now. Okay, before we put in our brake caliper, we're going to put in the rotors. And no, we're not reusing the junky old ones. We also hit up our buddies at AC Delco. This time they hooked us up with some beefy slotted OEM style rotors. Just go in like that. And basically what this is supposed to do is these are supposed to help cool the rotor. And as you can see, this thing is heavy duty. So this should help you get this thing to a stop in just about no time. So now let's put this on. Quick tip, if you're having trouble like me, you can just put a lug nut on there to hold the brake rotor while you're working. So yeah, that's just a quick little tip for you right there. So the next thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to put on the grease fitting for the upper control arm. Yes, I left it for a later time just because I feel like it. 8mm, just in case if you're wondering, and you basically tighten it just a little bit. You don't need to go to town on this one. Okay, next step after that, we have to take off this cap right here so we can install the brake caliper hose so we can actually have brake fluid flow through the brake caliper. How do you do that? Kind of get a screwdriver behind it, kind of pry it off. Comes with 2 copper washers, so you can use one of those if you want. Here's how you do it. The bolt goes in, copper washer on the other side, just like this. I know we're not done yet, but the reason I lowered the truck to the ground is because I want to come under here, take care of this spaghetti mess for the power steering, and bolt the steering column back up, and then finalize a few things so we can then finally be done. Okay, so for the steering, we're gonna make sure the steering wheel is 100% straight, so we can then go up front to the column down there, try to mate it to the steering gearbox. And how to do that is, as you can probably tell, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit closer. See, there's a flat spot, right? And there's a flat spot in the column as well. It's not really easy to show, but trust me, it's there. You take my word for it. And you just slide it there on top of the flat spot over here. Pretty self-explanatory. You have a very low chance of messing it up. So let's get to it. And after a little bit of cussing and swearing, the steering column is finally on the steering box, and I attached the steering lines right there, the power steering lines, which lead up to the reservoir, which, as you can see, I've put a funnel here because we're going to fill this up with power steering fluid. But don't think that you just put power steering fluid in and you're good. Nah, man, you got to bleed the system, because obviously fluid's leaked out of the steering box as well, not just the reservoir. So to do that, I'm going to show you all right now. Well, we got our power steering fluid, and apparently this thing takes generic, so we got the AutoZone version, which was the cheapest. So let's go to town. As you can probably tell, we jacked up the truck just a little bit. This will just make our job much easier. And how you're going to bleed the power steering system: you hop in the truck, you turn the steering wheel lock to lock. Just keep doing this. That's all you got to do. Just keep doing this. And then, of course, you make sure you do it when it's running. Okay, so for the stabilizer bar links, I actually did them a little differently than most people would do them on YouTube, because my truck actually has the torsion bars cranked up ever since I got it. I didn't want to change the look of it because that's how I like the truck to be. So what I ended up doing is, because the stabilizer bar links were a pain to put in, I ended up cutting the sleeve right here. Shaving off like maybe, I don't know, half an inch or something like that. Depends on how your truck is. You might not even need to do this step. But I needed to do it because my truck was a little modified. So I did it, and they fit perfectly. I went from like, what, 4 inches and a little bit to like 3 7/8 inch sleeve, not the screw. The screw is the same, the bushings are the same and everything. And it slides in beautifully, and you can get plenty of thread on there. You can do this too, but I don't really recommend trying this at home unless you know what you're doing. So yeah, that's what I did for the stabilizer bar links, and I didn't really cover them in detail. And here it is. 1995 GMC K1500 front suspension job completed. If you like the series, please give me a like, comment below. If you're interested in more content, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to the channel. And if you've got any comments and suggestions on what I should do next, please leave those down below. I'm looking forward to reading every single comment and replying to those as well. So yeah, guys, hope you enjoyed watching. Have a great day.